This video shows the making of this piece of artwork, which is on display in the gallery, and this piece of artwork that is also on display in the gallery. It is intended that this video be shown with those two finished pieces. This piece is complete and now ready for hanging. This piece still has a little bit of work, a little bit more work to be done on it. And this video itself will form a third element to what is effectively the result of a body of work over the last 18 months. It is also a reflective piece and produced so that I can actually see myself and observe what I do, when I do it, and how I do it, including this form of communication with you, the viewer. It has perhaps some complexity within it, but also simplicity. Simplicity in that there's the camera that is in the position now of you, the viewer, and the camera shows me with another screen on which I shall now play a second video. This second video shows the making of this, or partly shows the making, part of the process of making this sculpture, and in so doing reveals some of the process behind it. You'll now see on screen myself watching and looking and observing myself. In the background video that shows here shows me nude as a model for the making of this sculpture here. The beauty of this technology means that at any point in the making process I can freeze this frame here with my body in any position. The activity of making is as a displacement activity for the rolling and smoking of cigarettes. My project was basically about creating a new environment within which to explore creativity. And the project has changed from that basic idea. The idea was to create an extreme environment. For example, to give up smoking, and to then produce work in that extreme environment in order to try and understand the nature of creativity and change. That has changed. It was based on some misguided thoughts that I had around exclusion and self-exclusion and creativity. I believed that in order to be creative, you had to have had an experience of self-exclusion and exclusion in order to be creative. And I had embedded that belief very deeply, and fooled myself into believing that to be the case, and worse, fooled myself into thinking that it could be extrapolated out to everyone, that you as the viewer, in order to be creative, had to have experienced self-exclusion or exclusion in your past in order to be creative. And I realised that that is false. And so it's brought me to question my own creativity. And in that, I think my own creativity is probably due in part to a period of self-exclusion, exclusion, bullying. And that also applies, the same principle applies to smoking and the addiction to smoking. I believed that smoking aided concentration and the reflective process. It also is at the root, or at the time, part of my self-exclusion as a child, and, if you like, the rebel, the outsider element. But I've come to now look at that quite deeply. And my question has changed in a way. The nature of my inquiry has changed. Not least because I have failed to give up smoking, which was, to create that environment within which to then explore creativity. However, in that failure come some really valuable insights, and I'd like to now show you the making of this piece, or the latter part of the making of this piece, which was originally primed and coated with gesso. Many coats of gesso have gone into this as a foundation, and then it was taken outside, and I spread 7 ounces of tobacco and 6 months of cigarette ends collected over the 18 months, together with nicotine water that I put together. And basically I put a square of paper down on top of it, and then threw these pieces on randomly outside flat, and then put another board on top, and then left it there for a while, basically to sort of cook, and then took the board off and let nature and the rain have its impact on the materials that you can actually see for real in the gallery space. And then what I did was I cleaned as much of that off as possible, and then got another piece of paper which is a circle and put it in the middle. Took the whole thing outside and laid it flat. And then, as part of the aversion to and dealing with cigarette smoking, I then used myself as a model for the production of the body form, but also used my own body in the making of this artwork. And here you'll see me nude because I needed to be a model, and nude because I also wanted to experience the severity of the nicotine, almost self-abuse in a way, but that's the wrong terminology. It was like an aversion therapy. It was also a ritual, and it also performs the function of me being able to freeze the frame at any time and to observe the positions of the body. But it was nonetheless a highly emotional experience. It challenged me. It was produced 3 days ago. The weather was cold. It was a gap in the rain. I felt terrible. I felt feelings of being observed, of being looked at, even though it was simply me and the camera. And it was quite hard for me to go through this process of pushing myself. Each time I added another layer of cigarette ends, again collected over 2 months, and nicotine and 3 ounces of Old Holborn on this board. And because I have to put myself in different positions in order to model my body, I then lay on the nicotine, in the nicotine. I added water to the tobacco. My body became absolutely filthy, and I felt filthy. And all of that material then went into the piece that you see and the painting itself. After I had gone through that process, I then left the board outside for 2 days, and the rain could then work on it, and nature could actually then work with what I had done. And in a way, the process of painting then became a co-creative process, and I use that term because it is coined by Alan Rayner, who is looking at inclusionality theory and different theories of evolution as a biologist, chemical biologist. And he is working on the principle of co-creation. Evolution not as competition, in a sense, and not as cooperation. And I think this is really important work that relates directly to the way that I work as an artist and as a reflective practitioner. And together with the work of Jack Whitehead, who develops a theory for a living educational theory based on action research and the lived experience. Those theories have, I think, something really important to say, particularly when they're then combined with art practice and reflective practice itself. So, in giving up smoking, I'm now looking at it in a different way, at addiction in a different way. Not as a competition against myself, with myself, and a competition with external, extrinsic pressures and conditions, society or culture. And not as cooperation with myself, to cooperate with myself, or cooperate with others in that, but as a way of looking at it that is co-creative. And that works with nature, as opposed to a dominance over nature. And I think it leads to a greater understanding of nature through looking at as nature as being co-creative, and elements of that coming together to create. So, this piece here that you see I'm making, this piece, which is what it is, you can see it's a lot larger now compared to where it was here, and probably it will be a lot more substantial when you come to view it in the gallery space in a few days' time. And this piece talks about slavery. I produce a chain. It's a chain of cigarettes representing slavery, sort of as a symbol for slavery, and the enslavement of the self with the self through addiction. So you will see that this piece here, underneath where I'm sitting, is the piece on show in the gallery, and it gives you some insight into the making of that piece, and also insight into the making of the sculpture. But I've also decided to make this piece, this mediated piece, this video for you to see as a way of providing something for you, the viewer, to then respond to think about, to come up with ideas around what you've seen and what I've said. So in a way it then becomes co-creative, and that will only then become manifest in whatever you then do and what I then do with it. So that's basically it, really. There is a lot that I'd like to say, but I think that it can be said through experiencing, or other things can be said through experiencing the work, and also perhaps its relationship to others in the exhibition, and that this exhibition itself enables co-creativity. I know that I have been influenced by the work of Per, Steph, Eleanor, and that in the creation of the exhibition there'll be an influence and response, probably with Kate's work too. But it is always extremely hard to identify consciously where all influence comes from and what influence we all have on each other, and the influence of my work or the influence of the tutors and the influence of critical analysis of work and the influence of the world around us and the works that we look at and the things that we do. But I'm certainly going to look further into theories of co-creation and inclusionality, because I think they have a lot to offer in the field of community arts and moving the work on from works of art to the work of art and what art can actually do and provide us with, and the application of all of those reflective processes, making processes, into enabling others and oneself to develop. And that is it, really, in terms of what I have to say.